Well, greetings and welcome to our series of weekly devotionals as we move through the week looking at some different verses from Psalm 70 from the book of Psalms. Psalm 70 is a psalm of lament as the psalmist is expressing some deep sorrow that he or she is going through. I mentioned a few weeks ago in a children's message, I talked a little bit about different social media platforms like TikTok and, for us older folks, Facebook still, and how, on social media, we often present an image of ourselves that isn't really who we are. It's hard to really get to know the person just from social media platforms. My wife told me a story from last week that a coworker of hers was offended just from a text message that her supervisor had sent because she said the supervisor on the text message used an exclamation point, and she said, "Why was he angry at me?" And of course, the supervisor said, "Well, he was using an exclamation point because he was excited about what he was exclaiming." And so, it just proves the point that with electronic communications, whether it's social media, Instagram, even email and texting, we sometimes don't know the person's intent. We don't really know what the person was getting at. There's a lack of kind of personal touch. And I always favor personal, intimate, close encounters, relationships, communications with folks. I much prefer to be face-to-face with people if I can. I think you just get to know a person much better and deeper with those kind of close encounters. Not with aliens, just with one another. Certainly more so than we can on social media at the very least. And I mentioned this because I was reading about, I mentioned earlier in the week on Monday about the great Lutheran pastor and theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer and how he loved the book of Psalms. And in fact, Psalm 70 was one of his very favorites. But the passage that I read about Bonhoeffer said that, most folks regard him sort of from a distance. As a sort of modern day saint, as someone who was courageous in standing up to Hitler and the Nazi regime, as someone who was steadfast in his faith as he faced death for the things that he stood up for, the injustices that he fought against, and how so many people sort of admire him and consider him to be brave and honorable, and as I said, a modern-day saint. But few people really knew kind of what was going on inside, knew the real person. They, again, just sort of knew him from a distance as someone to be admired from afar. But in one of Bonhoeffer's poems, he wrote about sort of the dual natures of his personality, that at times he appeared to be contented, composed, and sure of himself, but that in reality he was troubled and homesick, ill like a bird trapped in a cage, he wrote in one of his poems. And so it is easy to understand why he may have been connecting with or comforted by the words of the Psalms of Lament in the situation that he was going through. But I am poor and needy, writes the psalmist. Hasten to me, O God, you are my help and my deliverer. I think, as Bonhoeffer probably would have attested to, the Psalms, especially the Psalms of Lament, I think, give us permission to sort of be ourselves, to not believe as people of faith, as Christians, that we always have to be courageous and composed, sure of ourselves, steadfast in our faith, that indeed there are times when we feel troubled and homesick and ill like a bird in a cage, and that's okay. I think the Psalms give us permission to simply be ourselves, to understand that God most certainly is present for us in those times when we are composed and sure of ourselves, and the times when we are poor and needy as well. And Bonhoeffer, at the end of his letter, wrote something that I think is important to remember for us as people of faith too. He wrote, "Whoever I am, O Lord, know that I am yours." Amen.